Hello and welcome everyone to a Varsity Tutors webinar that's an interesting one for us. Want to introduce us. Want to first just say hello and kind of what a crazy time we find ourselves in, but want to thank everybody for taking the time to be here and hopefully be pretty valuable for you. I always like to start any of these kind of presentations here with introductions. So, hey, I should have maximized the font on that. I'll make sure I'll miss names, but I'll kind of catch comments there. So, thank you guys. I'll step up at some point and do that. I love starting these with introductions. Jessica, great to meet you. You guys, it'll take you guys a while to chat. I want to just introduce. It's a community affair now. I think we're kind of all in this together. So Mary, Doreen, Chloe, we've got a few Varsity Tutors reps here also. I know my friend Melissa is going to be helping monitor the chat, making sure any messages I've missed come out there. So cool. We've got Maryland here. I know we've got some Seattle. I'm just outside of Los Angeles. I know we've got some, Melissa's in Philadelphia. Some people, all over the country here. So please let us know where you're from. Kind of Florida, Brazil, that's cool. Very great. Pasadena, not just down the road. I'm in Ventura, say LA. Austin, when they canceled South by Southwest, that was sort of the moment I think we knew. So Miami, New York, Missouri, very cool. Denver, Boston, condolences on Tom Brady. I'm hurting a little on that too. Houston, Portland, all over the place. Michigan, I like seeing that, Angela. I'm originally from Michigan, so there'll be some Michigan references on here. So Chicago, too many to count. Thank you all for being here. I want to let you know a little bit about Varsity Tutors and what we're all about. And I guess I'll kind of start with a little bit of a story. Is about a week ago, right around, I mentioned when somebody said Austin, South by Southwest, right around then, people started to realize, hey, there's going to be some changes in the ways that kids learn over the upcoming weeks and months. And one thing we started to find was a lot of our friends, former classmates, neighbors started to reach out to us at Varsity Tutors personally and say, hey, Melissa's on this chat. I know Doreen's one of ours on this chat. Matt, Caroline, a few others. Like, hey, you're experts at online education. Like, what should we be doing? What should we be thinking about? And so right around then, we started to feel a real responsibility. Our mission has always been connect learners with experts anytime, anywhere. Using technology really allows us to be able to do that, kind of like we're doing here. And so we kind of feel like, we're, at least our friends in our network, and then a lot of our clients started to reach out and say, hey, what can we do here? And so we want to talk about some of the research we've done over, the ensuing, I'd say, couple of weeks, but it's really maybe been 10 days or so since this really kind of hit a tipping point. About me, I've taught everything from, I started teaching preschoolers swim lessons when I was about 14 or 15. I've helped out, my mom was a preschool teacher. I've got a master's degree in education. I've taught high school and grad school type things. Worked with a lot of teachers. And so what I want to talk about, I've been on the phone with teachers from my own personal network, with friends from, I went to University of Michigan School of Education, so I'm still pretty close. It's been 15 years, but pretty close with their teaching with technology team. And then with all of our tutors as we put some things together. And so it's a community affair. Please, let's make this collaborative. I want to kind of, anytime we talk about some of the things we're trying to do with our own families, our own students, the Varsity Tutors learners and network, I want to encourage everybody here to please give your own suggestions. This is new to everybody. Like I said, we've done some research. We know a thing or two about particularly online education and some other things. We've been consulting a lot of tutors, but please, let's make this interactive and work together. So thanks everybody. The chat's been moving fast, which is my favorite thing about all these. So I love seeing that. If I've missed your city, we don't really need a full roll call, I guess, but thanks sincerely for taking an interest in giving your kids the best and giving us a chance to help you do that, and hopefully helping each other out tonight. The biggest thing I want to introduce you to, and I'll say it's not a sales pitch for two reasons. One, it's completely free, so I can't really sell it to you. And two, I'm responsible for making sure all of our free live lessons, there's enough for everybody. So I kind of, if I do too good of a job on the webinar, my job after the webinar gets a little bit harder. So I have to stop and say thank you to those from Ann Arbor showing up. So awesome. Virtual school day is kind of our response. Like I said, we sort of felt a responsibility, knew that people were coming toward us. And what we're excited about with that, please check it out. Maybe wait till after the webinar so we can stay on the same page and talking about all of that. So somebody say Ventura checking in. That's my job. I'm there too. Awesome. We're neighbors. What we like is it's one option. So one big thing we heard, I don't know if you guys have been thinking about this the last few days. One thing we heard from parents over the weekend, really since Friday, is, hey, it's cool that there's a lot of resources out there. I've got Google Docs with 200 links of educational resources. But that's a little bit overwhelming. Is anybody in that boat kind of feeling like, yeah, it's great that there's plenty to choose from, but man, that's pretty, awesome. We got a few Michiganders here. That's great. So we heard that from a lot of people that it's just, yeah, there's way too much information. Like, I don't know what to choose and click on. So we wanted to make it kind of one spot. It's not going to have absolutely everything, because that's not a sales pitch, but one spot you can get a lot of this done. Most of your kids' school day is done. And then here's the other things we think are important. It's interactive. A lot of the things floating around the internet are, download this worksheet or watch this video. We're going to do a lot of live lessons, personalized, and then this is sort of the one option curated for you that, hey, once, if you want to say, what do I do over the next week, you can log in here, with quick diagnostics. I'll talk more about the program toward the end of it, but kind of give, all free opportunities for you to be able to figure out, hey, for several hours a day, what can my kid do that, or kids do that will attack all of these kind of things. Cool. So let me. Oh yeah, I see some of the overwhelmingness, and yeah, schools need to subscribe. So I've noticed that too. So yeah, a lot of people get good. I'm glad I'm not the only one that was overwhelmed by those Google Docs. It's cool, and I really love that people are putting those together. But we want to make sure from us, we think it's helpful if there are a few really good resources instead of a couple hundred pretty helpful, but maybe difficult to fully navigate type resources. So. There you go. I love seeing where everybody's coming from. So thanks. So yeah, somebody asked, will there be feedback to help parents know how their children are doing with the program? Let me actually. I want to stay true to the title of the webinar, so I answer that and then other virtual school day questions. Let's do all that at the end. So like I said, the goal isn't a sales pitch. The goal is to help, and we think this program will help, and it's free. Will there be feedback for parents? Yeah, actually, one of the big things we like about it is there are diagnostic assessments that will kind of help you figure out strengths, weaknesses, and then what lesson plans are what should someone do. So if your child's in 4th grade, takes a math assessment and realizes that multiplication, she's pretty good. Division, and particularly division when there's double-digit numbers, is where things are getting a little bit challenging. It'll link to problem sets they can do. So you don't just get okay, she needs to work on this. We'll also kind of help guide you toward those. So we're pretty excited about that. Thank you for asking. This is what we want to talk about how can you help your students through this challenging time, and help yourself through this challenging time. So here's kind of our outline. I think a lot of you have seen, if you've seen the Google Doc that everybody has now, you've probably seen that there's a lot of suggested study days or suggested school days, because routines are so important. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about mixing up modalities, which is really important. One thing that we're pretty conscious of is, hey, we're basically an online tutoring platform. It's now online live classes and all those kind of things. You don't want kids having 8 hours a day of screen time so that you can work from home or figure out other, how you're going to make dinner with the grocery store shelves bare and all that. 8 hours of screen time is not what you want. So we'll talk about mixing up modalities. This one is near and dear to my heart. I think nobody's fault. But one of the things that tends to happen when, it's too rainy to go out for a recess, or, we used to have tornado drills, those who are from Michigan, I think Missouri, all kind of places in the tornado belt, and be like, well, we're stuck at school for a couple hours. Here's some worksheets. Here's some extra busy work. And it's just sort of, that grinds on kids. We'll talk about making it engaging, personalizing. We'll talk about leaning in to the idea that, kids are going to care about. They're going to wonder what's happening with coronavirus. They're going to be, curious about some of those things. There's ways to lean into that. And then the big thing is, you're not alone. I think just seeing that there's a community of people that everyone's sort of looking at, like, hey, what can we do? We want to talk about ways that you can network a little bit and not be, the sole proprietor of your own household's homeschool. You're in a community of people that can help. So I'm trying to catch up on a little bit of the comments and things here. I know Melissa's going to help out and some others. So thanks, everyone. We'll keep it super interactive. And at some point, I'm going to go change the font size. I'm missing a few of these that are really good comments. I want to start with the importance of routines with a question. Do you guys remember the daylight savings time change? And if your parents, I know that's like, Facebook is full of people fed up with the daylight savings time change. Everybody remember that? How just what a shock that is to especially younger kids, to their routine, right? So I think everybody's been there. What's crazy is, doesn't that feel like it was years ago? And it was, I think, 2 weeks. But I think everybody knows in parenting or education that just a 1 hour shift in the way that the world tells time is a huge shock to kids' system, and it takes a couple weeks to really get back into the routine and all that kind of a thing, and so just that switch is important. Well, think about what this is. This is, I used to wake up, go to the bus stop, this was my routine. I would sit next to my best friend and we would talk about, what we talk about. And then we would get to school and, we would hang out in this hallway until the bell rang. Like their lives had a routine that this is totally shifting. And so what's pretty important to do, early on, it doesn't have to be right away. I know a lot of parents have kind of said like, this week may be early spring break while we figure it out. But the more that you can establish some kind of a routine so that it isn't such a shock to kids' system, we're all a little bit worried about academic slide. I think if you're in a house that's kind of quarantined in and it's the family of 4, family of 5, family of 6, and you're on top of each other all day, every day, the behavioral slide is another slide that we need to worry about. Try to mimic the school day as best as you can. Wake up on time is kind of important. I know summer vacations is sort of that, hey, sleep in until the Price is Right is on, or it was for me at least as a kid. It's like, hey, we've got jobs to do, and so waking up on time. This one, I heard from a few teachers, particularly elementary school teachers. Kids don't wake up and then they're at school, right? And so if you're establishing a routine, keep in mind kids do walk to a bus stop and they sit and talk to their friends on the bus. Like I said, they get to be at school for 10, 15 minutes, kind of easing into the day, seeing people before things really get going. So if they eat breakfast and they're at school, think about it. Is there a morning activity that kind of replicates a little bit of whether it's fresh air, a little bit of motion, a little bit of sort of separating, I'm at home, now I've done this routine and I'm at school. So a walk around the block, maybe walking the dog first thing in the morning, or some kind of sort of fun chore that can be done outside, or some kind of activity, that kind of seems to be pretty important to that sort of, lack of a better term, separation of church and state. There's home, there's school, now they're merged together. Is there some kind of, a lot of us at Varsity Tutors work remotely, and one suggestion we all get is take a walk before you start school, or you may not want shoes in the house, but there's something about the routine of I'm putting on shoes or I'm putting on school clothes because between 8 and 3 I'm at school, and so I'm in a different mode, a different mindset. Those kind of habits are pretty important. This is also big. Recess, even high schools have gym class, right? And so some kind of physical activity, socialization is really big and changes the pace. And I think also just more like, we're going to be at this a while. I think Kansas just like an hour ago announced that schools are closed for the rest of the school year. Like, that's it. And so, as you're establishing routines this week and next, kind of make sure it's something you can live with, but also make sure it's productive so that, if that slide happens, think about what a 5-month summer vacation can do to habits and behavior. And so that's kind of important. One question I have for the group here is, has anyone started a routine that they feel that, a start the day routine has been helpful or some kind of thing? And I want to come back to, I'm going to step off for a second and just change the font size. I'm missing some of the detailed comments because even with the glasses, my eyes aren't as good, and I want to make sure I'm listening. So what routines has your family started that you're proud of, or how do people plan to address socialization, kids being around friends? So I'll be right back. I just want to change that font size. All right, well, this is where teaching with technology is like, I got to get that going. I'm seeing a little bit of those. Cool. Thanks to those volunteering some of those daily walks that they can help. Music practice, I love that kind of multiple modalities I think are important. So cool. 2 to 3, take the kids outside or go to the swings. Perfect playground type of things. I love Mark. I know Mark, another Ann Arbor, right? So cool to see some friendly faces in here. I love the idea of FaceTime. I think Zoom has made their platform free, and so for I think maybe just for educators, but I think there's even a free version for all of us. We actually I missed it because we were building virtual school day, but my whole extended family did a Zoom kind of hangout or Google Hangout with my grandmother the other night. I think it's important with the idea of socialization. Are there ways to make sure that the kids get to see their friends, they get to discuss what's going on at school, right? Think about doing school in a pure vacuum. And so if it's just like, hey, these kids are all friends or similar grades, we get a network of parents, let's just have them all read the same book. And once a week, one parent moderates a chat. What's in the book? What's going on? What have you read? That socialization will be pretty happy. I saw somebody mentioned getting dressed is important. That's for those of us who work remotely. That's where you can see yourself slide a little bit, is when you realize it's 3 o'clock and you're still in your pajamas, and technically you're at work, but kind of slob at that point. So those kind of things are just routines that are pretty important. Enrichment, Gina, I love that kind of reading, writing, talking. We built a lot of enrichment into our program. We're going to talk about kind of making things, enjoyable for some kind of like leaning into their interests and all those kind of things. So I'm sure I've missed some great comments, but I'm glad everybody's thinking about it this way. That just being in a house doing school for infinite amounts of time, like activity is important. Socialization, I think, is one thing that people are pretty pretty concerned about. Good question on balancing remote work with the homeschooling. I think routine can be really helpful there. If you have set up a routine where you sort of know, hey, these 2 hours are independent reading time, or you go from your live online class with virtual school day, and then when that's done, there's going to be an assignment, and you do that, and then you read, hey, that's 2 hours that dad can schedule meetings and work those kind of things out, and that can be helpful. I think rotating with parents a little bit of, hey, everybody in this group of friends or our group of neighbors, hey, why don't you take one day to moderate a Google Hangout or Zoom chat with people that gives all the other parents a free hour that they kind of know somebody else is watching, even if not physically. So those things can be pretty helpful. So definitely interested in other suggestions. Like I said, we don't have all the answers. We're working on some, but really interested in seeing what other people had. Another thing that's kind of important is make the routine personalized. there's kind of, at least in educational research, a pretty famous study from kind of the late 70s and early 80s where a group of researchers took kids and said, okay, they've got their math classes currently in the morning. And so we took this group of kids and normally their math classes in the morning. What if we move it to the afternoon? And then they found really quickly, like, oh, aha, if you move it to the afternoon, their test scores go up. So kids learn better in the afternoon if it's math. And then what was great is they did that same experiment with another group, kind of said, well, wait a second, is it that the afternoon is better, or does this group learn better in the afternoon? And sort of what they found is that depending on the population, groups do better when they learn things like math at a time that they're ready for it. And so things to think about, if your student is not a morning person, then maybe do some of the arts and crafts, physical activities, those kind of things first thing, so that they're not trying to memorize things they need to, or kind of do sort of deep critical thinking or analytical learning. They get to do something to warm up a little bit. Or if they're kind of usually out of bed and active, and it's sort of like, hey, let's get the early stuff out of the way, or the hard stuff, or the eat your vegetable stuff done early, kind of lean into what their routine is. And the research is pretty big. If you can give, the subjects, the STEM subjects in particular, if they're, every one of us has a more productive time a day than another for those kinds of things. And if you can identify what that is, that can be really helpful. Another big one is, when do you have time? Like, this is your routine too. So it's not just for the students. So think about, how do you personalize this to you? When do you need to get things done? And at that point, is that when it's sort of like, I think every one of us that's been to school knows that there are certain teachers that when they need a day off, that's movie day. It's sort of, I remember, quite a few dodgeball day. Gym teachers were great on sort of like, we can teach you something, or we can roll out the dodgeballs and go. Like, teachers have their cheats, and you can kind of build in yours too. When your routine is, hey, I really need on these days to have meetings to, one parent's got to go figure out the grocery store or whatever happens. Think about your own schedule, and again, if it's a pretty reasonable routine that that kids can buy into, you can buy yourself a little bit of time. And then I mentioned kind of my earliest teaching experience came from teaching preschoolers how to swim, and I still think, I think parents know it too, kind of, maybe instinctively or over time, but the best advice I ever got was, give kids decisions that you're happy with either one, so they feel a little bit of ownership. So if it's kind of a, hey, we're gonna try to build out a schedule, would you rather read in the morning or do math in the morning? Would you rather do this or that? And see what they kind of commit to. And if they have a little bit of ownership of it, it makes you less of a prison warden, it makes you more of a facilitator. And so giving them a little bit of ownership of kind of what their schedule would look like, or talk to them about what their school day's like. Hey, what classes do you usually do in the morning, and do you like that? What would you rather? If you could design your own school day and tell, Mr. Whoever, Mrs. Whoever, how you would like school to go, what would you rather do? And see what comes out. I think if they have a little bit of ownership, or if they help make it like what their school day was like, and they're really, routinized that way, that will help out quite a bit. So any thoughts on how people are personalizing routines? Has anybody done much of that? People know kind of, oh yeah, we're only doing science projects in the afternoon because I can't have the house a mess all day. Or does anybody have any thoughts on what they've been doing? So I'm catching up on some of the chat. I do love how everybody's building some kind of physical routine into things. So physical really helps, those kind of signals of even teaching graduate students test preparation stuff. I've done some of that, and finding even just like routines like tap your pencil 2 times to try to remind yourself this 2-word phrase that's important anytime it's this kind of a problem. People really buy into kind of the physical manifestation of like, I'm at school now, or it's this kind of a class now, tends to be really happy. So Cool, Jane. It's funny. Part of me first was like, ooh, maybe that's sarcasm about the teenage syndrome, but I really do think a little bit of ownership. They don't get to run the whole thing, but if they get to kind of choose, I think, we tend to, people buy in a little bit more if they've had some choice. So cool. Yeah, Jessica, I agree. I think we all kind of do, right? So that's pretty good. So Oh, wow, that's a cool sixth grader putting the schedule together. One thing I have found is I've been around a lot of kids who just they know what happens at school, especially younger kids. I had a nephew one time that would want to play school, and if you were playing school with them, you were playing school for 2 hours because this is what happens. And so that's pretty important. Kids, I love that. So, yeah, good question. Right now, virtual school days is K to 12. Although the CEO of Varsity Tutors has a preschooler and has let it be known that if we design for preschool in a way that's useful, then he would be very happy about that. So we'll see. Right now, it's K to 12. So routines are important, and then here's another one that's pretty important as well. Is children take their cues from adults, right? So, you watch a toddler fall down, and if you laugh and whoops, that was funny, they pop up and it was funny. And if you fuss over them, they will cry, right? They tend to take their cues from the environment, learn from where adults go. And so you set the tone. I think the more that you can make this work out in their favor, this is an opportunity, this is going to be fun, we're going to enjoy this, those kind of things is pretty helpful. So I love that on the chat there is great. And my middle school, and my mom still has, I don't want to say my age, but it starts with a 4. My mom still has the magnet on her refrigerator home. Our motto is attitude is everything. And it was a pretty neat thing to get bought into in 6th grade. We started to realize hey, if this is an opportunity to learn, we did a really cool webinar with a bunch of middle school teachers and administrators back in the fall. It's part of a webinar series we did. And they mentioned sort of the power of, I don't have to do this, I get to do this, right? I don't have to do math today, I get to learn about fractions, and that's going to be cool. Or I get to learn about this cool period in history, or I get to read this book that was one of Mom's favorites when she was growing up. Kind of that attitude, you can kind of set the tone. And so, productive routines are helpful, some kind of activity. I won't do it for you, but I still can sing the wake up song that my mom sang us every day, that her mom, sang her every day. It was sort of hey, today's going to be a good day kind of a thing. The hardball one here, I will mention. So I did call out Ann Arbor, my co-creator on a lot of his content, Melissa, who's in the chat, who is our elementary school expert at Varsity Tutors, is an Ohio State fan. So we kind of I had to put this on her, but the origin, if you guys have heard that attack each day with the enthusiasm unknown to mankind, is kind of Jim Harbaugh's sort of insane quote. But what it comes from, and I think it's important for setting the tone, he's a grown man, and he says that all the time. And it came from when he was growing up. His family only had one car, and Mom got a job that was far enough away that they lived where Dad could walk to work and Mom would drive, and so when they would have to walk a mile or so to school, Dad gave the kids each basketballs and said, we're going to dribble the basketballs on the way to school. It's going to be fun. We are going to attack today with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. And you look at those kids, all turned out all right. At least successful in their fields and pretty enthusiastic about things. The overall headline is if you can set the tone of we get to do this, this is going to be fun, or what a cool opportunity we get to learn together, or something like that, the kids will take the tone of their teachers, of the adults around them, and that can be really helpful. So awesome. All right, I'm missing a little bit. I think Melissa's got that pretty well handled. This is a pretty important one. I think that anyone who's taught for a while, particularly younger, is really important. Is mix up modalities. So I have a title of slides right above my head, and we'll get over here. It's kids need a change of pace. I think you go into an elementary school classroom and see the number of activities planned for a day. As our tutors have been putting together their lesson plans, even for an hour with elementary school kids, it's pretty cool to see their lesson plans where they're like, for 15 minutes we're doing this, then for 10 minutes we're doing that, and sort of mixing up. And you don't need to be scheduled to the minute like that, but think about different types of activities, listening or watching passively versus doing, whether it's hands-on kind of things, or it's, hey, you're going to read this book, but then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to do some math problems, or you're going to, watch this educational video, but then after that, I want you to write a reflection paper on it or something. That listening versus doing, too much passive consumption, it's easy to check out. breaking that up is really helpful. This one's also important, again, as an education technology company. We're pushing screen time. We have a lot of screen time to offer, but screen time versus activity time is really important. And then a hardcover book as well. If you have books that kids haven't read, Amazon is still running Prime, and want to get some books around so they can get away from the screen, maybe move to a different room and read something, even if it's not The Catcher in the Rye, if it's something a little bit more that they're interested in. Just being able to get away from the screen, being able to do something, create something, and do some book time. Is it structured or is it creative? Do they get some kind of free thinking, free writing time? And then this, again, like we talked about, group and social, mixing some of that in. Can you network with other families to be able to have a book club, or maybe all get on Skype or Google Hangouts or something and try a project together, a science experiment together? Can kids get just FaceTime to talk about what they've been learning and maybe share ideas? That'll be really important. And so for that reason, if you kind of look at some of the classes we're really excited to have in Virtual School Day, we've got a beginning origami class of just like, hey, we've been trying to be really conscious of, you might not be able to get to the arts and crafts store to get unique experiment things, but hey, with paper around the house, can kids learn a new skill and do something fun that way? We've got a dance history class that starts next week, where kids will have to get up and move to learn about some of those kind of things. Graphic design is creative. We've got a superhero stories where kids are going to kind of make their own books where they're the superhero and they get to think about that. And so, all kinds of really mixing up modalities is important, because too much passive consumption, it gets boring, it kind of lulls people to sleep. And again, we're all concerned about screen time as well. So I've got the chats going pretty nutty here. So I think that's cool. Please, does anybody else have plans for ways that they're going to kind of mix things up? I know there's pretty good, we've got some home science lab classes. Bill Nye's website actually has some really good do-it-yourself science lesson plans that aren't too high of a lift. Our team's working on also, should launch probably in the next week or so, a do-it-yourself science experiments and activities and arts and crafts kind of a section, so that there are suggestions and things there, because it is sort of important to do something, to be active, versus just kind of sit at a desk and do school that way. Cool. So 3D printing is cool. Baking. Actually, another story I heard recently was somebody saying, like, we're going to make sure there's family activities when it's after school, so that it's a lot of times everybody's goes to, whether it's their the laptop, the screen, their book, and kind of does their own thing, but kind of like, hey, I want to get the family together and we'll try to cook something new or do something. I think that's really cool. I was programming robots. I feel like somebody pitched a robotics class to us today that we need to get loaded up there pretty well as well. Let me see what else we've got there. So, virtual museum visits, Joey, I love that. That's the Smithsonian side. I actually think is a little overwhelming to get to at first, but once you get into it, they've got cool. A lot of museums have virtual visits. Did you guys see just randomly that video going around of when they let the penguins run wild at the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago yesterday, I think? That's even kind of a cool visit. I'm sure there's others coming on there. So April, I love that for getting the cooking. You're in charge of your own lunch. That's a skill and an activity, which is pretty important. Which I love that. So that's cool. Lastly, I think you're asking about kids that are a little advanced for kind of standard K-12 curriculum. That's where a lot of these enrichment type classes. We're going to talk about some of the others we have. We've got a Johns Hopkins master's in public health, teaching about the science of pandemics, and that can be at least it's new information and not something that that's kind of like I've already done this subject in school. We've got a former National Parks Ranger talking about the history of national parks. So we're trying to design in our program enough unique and kind of special interest things, especially because we know some kids may be at this for 3 weeks and then their school reopens or dumps a bunch of homework on them. We want to make sure that there are things that you can sink your teeth into pretty quickly that's kind of new new to everyone and sort of in a special, it's a kind of a special interest or something that everybody can do. So cool. Drinking while teaching. I'm not. I know that's not me. What else we have? So virtual visits I think is really cool. If anybody has links, or even just like, I don't know if YouTube lets you drop links if you're not like the admin, but if you've got other like suggestions for particular museum visits and things, that can be really helpful if you guys want to share that in here. So that's awesome. But yeah, like doing and mixing modalities is going to be really important. I want to ask you guys this, little bit of a pop quiz on personalizing and making things engaging for your kids. How many of you remember any or all of these? Do you remember the quadratic formula? Could you name all 50 state capitals if you need to? Do you know the order of the various rebellions in American colonial and revolutionary and articles of Confederation history? The steps of cell respiration? Be honest, you don't have to say what they are, but how do we feel about all that? So, all right, so okay, and actually I like Joshua's answer, and most of 4, right? Some of them, most of it, cool. Some definitely no's in there. So, yeah, everybody's got some blind spots on all those, right? So, some of us are cheating because we know students that just went through that, right? My point with this one is, because I was going to say, some people, if you remember the Animaniacs song, may remember the state capitals because of that. We don't remember. The content is important, but really, how many of you guys remember this, though? Your favorite science project you ever did as a kid, your favorite teacher and why, kind of, how that teacher made you feel, your favorite book from elementary school, how many Where the Red Fern Grows people are out there. Do we feel a little bit better on the second list? We all remember that, right? Like our favorite experiments or field trips or teachers and all those kind of things. And so I think it's really important there is recognize that, hey, if your kid slips a little bit on certain memorized formulas that they would have learned in that class or that grade or something like that, the world's going to be a little bit behind going into next year. The next fall's teachers have some catch up to be able to have people do. I think people are throwing out their favorite teachers' names. If you want to name them, that's awesome. I love that. And so this is really important. A huge part of school is learning how to learn, right? You think about that stat that we think about all the time in a technology company, and I even forget, Moore's Law kind of dictates it that like the jobs that your kids are going to be doing, half of them don't exist yet, like new technologies. The important thing with school is learning how to learn, learning to be curious, learning how to problem solve, and so this is pretty important. If don't make your goal that like I need to cover absolutely everything on this syllabus, test the kids, make sure they know it. If they come out of this spring having learned something they enjoyed, having been able to really delve into an educational or education adjacent type interest, that's pretty important. I think this is one of our favorite quotes at Varsity Tutors is that tell me and I'll forget, teach me and I may learn, involve me and I'll remember, and just getting kids involved. So if you can lean into their interest, if you'd rather they read whatever the reading list says they should, but they're just really devouring science fiction novels or the latest in a series that they really like. Hey, the fact that they're reading is a win. So kind of give yourself small wins of they're doing something that's educationally relevant and they're enjoying it. And it isn't exactly what the syllabus would have said if the middle school was still in session this late April or whatever it is. But man, they're learning, they're liking learning, they're developing that interest is pretty important. That I think one thing that is I think we kind of all know to be true is every generation has that one era they really remember. Whether it's like for my parents was the Kennedy assassination, and they were like single digit ages, but they can tell you everything that happened that weekend. I was 8 or 9 when the Challenger blew. I can tell you everything that happened that whole weekend. Big events like this kids remember, and so if they remember this time being home from school that was really cool. I learned a lot about this. I got really into these books. I watched all of these Discovery Channel videos and took this really cool class from virtual school day and got turned on to something new. Like if we can use this time to nurture curiosity while they're sort of sponges in an era that they'll remember, that's probably a bigger win than being able to say, yep, we checked all the boxes in the the textbook. So I mean, I'm a little behind. I talk too much. I get a little bit behind on Embrace the Wimpy Kid books. I think that's great. Definitely. Oh, reading challenge, awesome! Yeah, I love that. So actually, they say the best student incentive program, or one of the best, not necessarily the best. If you guys remember the Book It program Pizza Hut had, that just the act of getting kids to read more, of all the student incentive programs of giving, paying kids for grades, or any kind of like they get a prize for doing things, that's been the most effective on a broad scale because it incentivized inputs. It's things kids can do more of, and they get a little bit of control over, I like these books, I'll read these books. And they said that was one of the ones that moved the needle in student achievement in reading more so than other incentive programs of, we'll pay you for this or that. And it was because it was students had a little bit of autonomy, they got to play to their interests, and it rewarded good behavior that kids could control a little bit more than did you get the grade, which was something important there. So, awesome. Trying to get caught up. See a lot of pretty cool agreement and everything in there. So yeah, stories to tell. I love that point there too of sort of like, they'll be able to remember what happened. They won't necessarily remember individual facts they learned necessarily, but they'll be able to kind of remember the era, tell their kids, their grandkids, of like, here's what happened and here's what we did. If you guys heard, maybe I haven't gone to like Snopes or anything. Wasn't it Newton invented calculus while he was quarantined during a pandemic in like the 1600s or so? So letting kids noodle. He wasn't a kid, I don't think, at the time, but letting people kind of noodle on something that they're fascinated by during a time like this. Newton invented calculus. I think that's true. I did a little bit of research before saying it, although who knows if everybody's getting from the same source there, but that could be happy. So anyway, a couple things here that are pretty important is, I think we've covered a lot of this already. Some of the busy work has its place, and sometimes you just need a break. You just need to give them a worksheet. One thing I want to call out, somebody said a while ago while I was talking and didn't get a chance to say it, if they're doing things, whether you grade them or just review them and they get some kind of feedback is important. Make sure they get that. Play into your students' interest, seek out ways for them to interact with things. This one's pretty important. I've talked to a lot of teachers who are parents who are saying the one big plan they have to do is at the dinner table, they're going to ask a lot of questions. What did you learn today? Tell me about the book you're reading. Kind of make sure, in school, there's kind of a pretty rapid feedback loop. There's grades, there's, behavior points, there's stars on the board and all those kind of things. That's one thing that's going to be a little bit lacking. That's one thing that you may need to do a little bit more of, just take an interest. And it doesn't need to be stars, stickers, free pizza, Pizza Hut, any of those kind of things. But if you're taking an interest, there's a technique they use a lot in the product design, and I think in other things too, called the 5 whys, which is just ask a question and then ask why 5 times and try to get a little bit deeper and kind of, for kids, it sort of forces them to, hey, how's that book you're reading? I don't like it. Okay, well, why? Well, here's why. Okay, well, why is that? And the more that you're asking why, it shows that you're interested, but really it forces them to think critically, to really get deeper into, are they at the surface saying, I don't like this book? Or, if they say, hey, what did you learn today? Well, I learned that, this event changed the course of a civil war. Well, why is that? And you can kind of force that sort of wrong word, but encourage that kind of deep knowledge there. And so in terms of enrichment, getting into interest, just to kind of showcase some of what we're doing with virtual school day, like I mentioned, we've got classes like history of the national parks, which is pretty cool. Video games, sound design, we've got that one starts Thursday, which is a guy who majored in classical music and then has turned that into sound design for video games. We've got a really popular class right now that's the origin of your favorite fairy tales, kind of going through like, hey, we know you like this story. Let's talk a little bit more about how it came to be and how the characters were developed and how it kind of manifests in other cultures and language and things like that. So one thing we really want to do is make sure that kids have opportunities to learn things they care about and are interested in. I should say joke, it's a weird thing to joke about, but sort of, we're kind of exponentially growing our class volume every couple of days, sort of the way, trying to parallel the exponential growth curve. So there'll be more of those out there. But one thing we're big believers in is if kids are engaged, they're involved, they will learn, like the Franklin quote is pretty important. So my kid hates when I ask why. I think that means you're doing it right? That's good. It's forcing them to think, which is really happy. So that's pretty good. So yeah, Joe, I love that start with what they know and then just kind of dig a little deep. And if they don't have good answers, why talk about how are we going to find out why? But that technique is pretty helpful. I think the dinner table will be a pretty important place the next couple of months for a lot of us to just make sure that somebody's taking an interest in what they're doing. They really have to kind of think things through and think at a deeper level, kind of get some of that feedback going is going to be pretty important. So I went the wrong way there. Cool. Another element on personalization, how am I doing on time? I was like, oh man, I don't know if we have enough time. Hopefully this is helpful thus far. Another thing that's pretty important is recognize that your kid may be in 7th grade, but they're at a very particular point in 7th grade. And so kind of personalizing where they are. If you are finding like, yeah, the enrichment stuff's fun, and I want to make sure that has its place, you do want to make sure that if they show up for 8th grade, that when that class starts, they're up to speed. They know the math they need to know. They've got the vocabulary and they're going to be graded on good grammar in good grammar in using grammar well in papers later. And they know some of those rules. Like, there is a little bit of like, hey, we need to make sure they're not falling that far behind where everybody else is going to get. Make sure you kind of look at, hey, where did the syllabus leave off? And you can even talk to kids. Like, hey, if they've got their textbook at home, what were you guys on? What chapter were on? What part of, you were learning Revolutionary War history? What part? Where did you leave off? Was it, Declaration of Independence, Boston Massacre? Where were you? And let's talk about a little bit of that, because then you can sort of meet them where they are. One thing we're a little bit leery of, and we've got a lot of resources for this, is, hey, here's an 8th grade math worksheet. And if the first 20 problems are dead easy, kid mentally checks out. If the first 20 problems are way too hard, kid's overwhelmed. And so kind of finding ways to meet them where they are is pretty important. And you can do that by looking at their recent grades, assignments, kind of, teachers have sent home syllabus, or, I think it's probably like so many classes are online, at least the websites are still up and you can see that. Ask teachers, other parents, kind of, hey, where were the kids at? What are you working on? How's that going? And then diagnostic resources, we have kind of for most subjects, K to 8 at least right now, kind of adaptive assessments that are quick that will sort of spit out lesson plans for you and say, hey, your kid's in 7th grade math. Like I said, she's great at these things. Here's the stuff, she probably hasn't gotten to yet. Here's some individual worksheets with kind of a logical learning plan that will personalize. There's a lot of one size fits all. We talked a little bit about, the ever-growing Google Doc of resources that has a lot of links to, hey, here's a bunch of resources for 4th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade, but make sure that you're taking, and put the onus on the kids too, but kind of meet them where they are, because 4th grade, 8th grade is a long year. Make sure that the kind of things they're working on are appropriate for where they are, and this is kind of a great opportunity, if the resources guide you, to be able to help them sort of personalize, with a class of 30 moving at sort of the pace of the median student. Here, you get to personalize a little bit better, so it is kind of a cool opportunity. So I'm behind on a few comments here. So I always love how long is this going to last? Is it like, is this over yet? Or I just joined, I want more. So hopefully it's the latter there. So yeah, Bill, there's within Virtual School Day, when you sign up and select your grade, it will send you all the assessments for that grade. And you can sign up with another account if you have multiple kids in multiple grades, so it'll send those out right away. Those come via email, just sort of the way they're delivered right now. So that'll be pretty important. So Daniel, that's like I love that question. What is Virtual School Day? So why, thank you, kind sir. I get to talk about it. I'm going to do a walkthrough in like 10 minutes of everything that it is. It's kind of the Varsity Tutors response to, people need help, parents need help, students need help. So it's kind of our response to that. We'll talk a little bit about that. So we'll go through all of those kind of things there. So cool. Awesome. I think I'm hopefully reasonably caught up on comments. And thanks again, everybody, for making it interactive. It's way more fun that way. This one here is obviously make it age appropriate, but kids know your kids know what's going on, right? And I'm sure there's fear in some cases. I think there's a lot of annoyance in other cases. Like, really, I can't go outside. We can't go to this event. My, soccer games are getting canceled now. I was excited. Opening day was in a couple weeks, or March Madness is done. I think there's probably a lot of annoyance, right? And some fear in there. But kids, they're picking up. Like, this is a big moment in their lives. They want to know why things are being done. So I think it's important to kind of know, especially depending on sort of your children's age and curiosity level, lean into the curiosity a little bit. One thing that's kind of important now is this is a great opportunity to teach empathy. Like, hey, why are we stuck at home? None of us are sick. And so, by being out in the world, we have the possibility of making other people sick. And so it's kind of a cool, we're all in it together empathy lesson. The interconnected world, just being able to see how quickly it is for people to travel place to place. And so, if one place gets a cold, that cold's coming somewhere else. And I think it can be, there's maybe fear in there. There's also kind of opportunity. Hey, look at how, things that affect one part of the world affect others. Like, kids like knowing a lot of times that they're part of something bigger. And really what I shouldn't say great about it, because there's nothing great about, a virus like this, but the situation, what it leads to opportunity for is geography and maps. Like, we're all kind of looking at maps of the country. Where are things? And so if kids are interested in asking about it, it's not a bad opportunity to be able to kind of look at, like, hey, where are the big hubs in international travel, and look at, that's kind of why people are focusing on these cities and those cities and all those kind of things. It's a good, I shouldn't say good. It's an opportunity to get into maps. Graphic literacy is one we do. A lot of SAT, ACT programs, and one thing school teachers tell us a lot that they worry about, particularly when the SAT changed a couple years ago, is kids should be better at reading graphs than they are. It isn't always core to every subject's curriculum. Sometimes falls through the cracks a little bit, and so opportunities to be able to read graphs and data models and sort of kind of get into the science is really interesting, and so those kind of things. Just sort of, the difference between exponential growth. I think in our generation, it was chain letters, like, almost like pyramid schemes. Like, hey, if you send this to 6 people and they send it to 6 people, a couple weeks, you're going to get, whatever it was, baseball cards, stamps, whatever, whatever, just letters, I guess, postcards back. That was the kind of, we learned about exponential growth that way. Here, there are opportunities, again, age appropriately to kind of, if kids are interested in what's going on, there are real skills that they can learn about understanding the world a little bit better, understanding how data is modeled a little bit better. Has anyone? See, I don't say has anyone. I think a lot of people have. That's a really cool Washington Post simulation about how the self-quarantining works and how just how many people you bump into in a different a day or another. And if this many people are self-quarantined, here's how it slows it down. Kind of that stomp the curve a little bit. So. I love that comment, Bill, the exponential. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. That's an interesting deal there. But, if kids are interested, there are ways to make this, not just fear-based, to make it educational and kind of lean into that interest. What's going on in the stock market? One other thing that I think everybody struggles with, actually, is, say the stock market goes down 20%, right? Which, sad to say, that's kind of where we're at, right? Probably even a little bit more. How much does it have to go back up to get to even? And it's not 20%, right? If you go from 100 to 80 is a 20% drop. Well, now you got 80. To add 20 to it, that's 20 is for 25%. It's a quarter of 80. And little things like that of just kind of like, hey, you're interested in this? Why don't you, check out this math a little bit? What kind of person, if the stock market rose 10% today, what would it be? Just little things that kids are interested in. It's kind of real world. It's an opportunity. If they're taking that interest, there's a lot to be able to learn from a lot of those. So exactly, it's every test loves the percent change question. So you'll get there, whatever test you're kind of looking at. So So, ooh, good question. Yeah, YouTube videos on those. I like the suggestion. So I can stand in front of YouTube for a while. We have a bunch of tutors. I really like that suggestion. We may play around with that a little bit. I really like that. So very cool. Yeah, I think topical stuff like that. Thank you. Somebody's taking notes for us, I think, right? So cool. All right, there's enthusiasm for that. So I would take a note on my slide, but I can't. But anybody from Varsity wants to send me a quick email, I'll get to work on that a little bit later. So, also, if you're talking about it, we actually have on our blog, I don't necessarily need to overkill it now because we borrowed a lot from UNICEF, but kids are going to ask about it. And I think one important thing, that I know a lot of parents are talking about is kids, particularly younger kids, are scared, right? And I think it's important to kind of know, okay, why we're home. It's more about prevention. That ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It is a kind of it's a keep calm moment. We're doing things early so that there isn't a catastrophe late. There's a great UNICEF article, I think we can drop in the chat. Our blog that references it about kind of using language that doesn't, the fear is saying like this person is transmitting. People are out there transmitting the disease. And it's like, no one's consciously doing that. It's just, if someone has contracted it, it may be contagious, and that's why we need to keep people around. And I think this is pretty important too. We live in a hyperbole-laden nation, the most hyperbole-driven, nation in the world, or culture in world history, or whatever, just hyperbole. And so people want to use apocalypse, plague, all these kind of things when it's not really. And so kids kind of latch on to sort of that doomsday language and be a little bit careful there. And then I think a good place when kids are up with it's that Mr. Rogers quote. That's actually the Tom Hanks Mr. Rogers, because we're all feeling a little bit of Tom Hanks these days as he recovers. That hey, whenever something's going bad in the world, I think it was his mother told them, look for the helpers. There are always people helping. And so if kids are struggling a little bit with fear on this, there are plenty of opportunities to look for helpers. The researchers that are out there, the people working in hospitals, the people out there still manning the grocery stores for us while everybody else is at home. So there's a really good UNICEF article. I think we got a link in there that will from our blog that will talk a little bit about some of the ways that experts suggest talking about what's going on in the world right now. So I think it was Susan asked. There's 20 hours, free hours of activity. I think committed to 30 hours of free activities per age group. I'm going to get there in just a second. One last kind of generic help slide that transcends Varsity Tutors. That's things you guys can do, and then we want to talk a little bit about virtual school day. Realize what I've loved about it. I feel bad anytime I'm presenting because the camera's here and the chat's over there and I'm talking and I miss some really good stuff in the chat. So I always go back after and realize, I wish I would have caught that and said something. But what I think this is a great example of is there are a lot of people that are in the same boat, that are just parents want to network and help each other out through this. And it's amazing how it takes a community, it takes a tragedy or something like that to build a community. About 50 yards to the right of where I'm standing right now, there was a big wildfire a couple of years ago, and it was terrible. And then a couple of days later, it was like the whole community, everybody was friends again. And so these are not even friends again. Everybody was like so nice to each other. Can I help you out with those things? And this is kind of one of those cases. You're not alone. Social media has been great. I think Pinterest is really loading up with do-it-yourself science project type things, and you can sort of look at other parents and educators that you really respect and see what they're choosing, and it's helpful for that way. A lot of good stuff going around on Facebook. I know my feed now is, I think some of you may have come through that, is talking about the things that Varsity Tutors and other companies are doing. So there's plenty of good ideas and things out there. I think that'll continue as people sort of find out what the best ones are. We've talked a little bit about socialization. Everybody craves that, and so reaching out to your network of parents or school groups. If there are websites for classes, you can talk to the teacher and see if they'll maybe organize some kinds of things. Everybody wants a little bit of socialization. Has to be done online in most cases, but people are looking for that. And we talked about these resources. So recognize that you're definitely definitely not alone. The community is kind of coming together to be able to help people out. Where, one of the things we're trying to do is like, hey, can we narrow the playing field a little bit? So it's not 200 resources. It's, hey, here's a handful of places with great resources, but kind of reach out to your communities. I've loved watching people share their ideas on routines and socialization and everything here. And I think you'll find everybody's thinking about the same thing. And I think the last couple of days has been a little bit panic-driven, but people are finding solutions that work. And so, your network, there are Facebook groups popping up, like I said, Pinterest pages of all those kind of things. Like, leverage your network, and that'll, the world is coming together, which is great. I'm going to move this out of the way. You guys I want to show a little bit of a tour. Let me pause. Does everybody have things to come? Before I get into virtual school day too deeply, any other comment? I mentioned networking, and then I'd roll to a new topic. Other thoughts, other ways that people are networking, socializing. I think we've done a little bit of that. How much? We got like 5 minutes, and then I'll kind of do Q&A, although I'm leaning on the community to help with the answers on some of that too. So. They used apocalypse. Yeah, read that UNICEF article. They're saying it's like that puts a little bit of fear in there. Let me make sure Oh, Sean, I love that you're asking. Yeah, I think the same link you're at right now will just turn into the recording, a couple minutes after this is done. So I'm really glad you're asking that. So. Oh, cool, yeah, learning languages at that time, that's awesome. Yeah, we actually were going to add I think we just added some elementary school Spanish classes in the last day or two. So, all right, so here's virtual school day. Thank you, Cynthia, for kind of pushing, making sure, hey, let's get to virtual school day. Here's what virtual school day looks like. So I've already registered for 6th grade. You can do whatever. If some people mentioned, hey, my kid, is doing above grade level in certain subjects, made it pretty easy for you to be able to navigate to other grades to see what's available there. What we think, one of the huge drivers that we're so excited about is we've got live lessons. I think it's, the plan is, and we're close to it for all grade levels, and by next week we'll be there and stay there throughout this, is 30 plus hours of live lessons to choose from. You don't have to do all of them. And like I said, mix up modalities. You probably don't want to do all of them for each grade level. And so, if you click the calendar, you get here, some options for middle school classes. We've got classes on careers in science, on journalism, secrets to great test takers. This is that science of pandemics, winning arguments with logic, history of pop music, those kind of things. A pretty big catalog there. There's also academic subjects as well. We've got a lot of creative tutors that are volunteering. Well, let's get the fun one started. We'll have plenty of pure academic kind of algebra 2 and those kind of things on there as well. So the classes, you come in and it'll kind of surface the most age appropriate ones for you, and you can scroll a little bit for other interests and things that are there. There's the assessment area, which will give you a report that it's kind of small here, but once you've created an account, it'll send you all the assessments we have for the subjects for that grade level. If you want others, there will be, I think, within the next day or so, a button to request others. So, we started building this on Thursday, and we're pretty proud of where we're at right now. So there'll be a button to request more. And with those, they're adaptive. So based on how you're doing, if we know that you're great with multivariable equations, we don't really need to test you on single variable equations, and we can go pretty quickly kind of using item response theory and Bayesian outcomes to be able to narrow in on, within 20 minutes or so per subject, here's a logical learning plan for your child in that subject, and then link you to, specific activities that will help them address that. There's also just kind of entire grade level wide for math, language, arts, and science. You can go through and do a lot of practice problems, flashcards, and just kind of see and navigate through all of those. The idea is, like I said, mixing up modalities with active classes, with some kind of assessment, with practice things to do, with reports that customize, have kind of a one-stop shop for not necessarily every hour of every day of the week, but where you can kind of, on a Saturday or Sunday say, hey, this looks good to be able to give me 3-4 hours a day for the next few weeks. I feel really confident that my kids bought into the plan. They're learning. They're excited about a lot of what they're learning. That's a lot of virtual school days. So I'm sure there's questions. So Laura said, don't see the assessments. There will be a button here, like relatively soon. The engineers are working on it. Right now, when you register, it emails them to you. So check your inbox there. So yeah, Randy, good question. Create multiple accounts for each child. It's I think right now the only way to do. Melissa, tell me if I'm wrong. Is I think you do have to have. I think you have to have multiple, because it's like the accounts are based on the user, not on the parent, I believe. Check me on that, anybody that's at the office, to make sure. I've done a ton of testing. Daniel definitely covers high school, so it's K through 12 right now. So actually one little wrinkle in high school is because kids do different math subjects at different times. So if you go to the high school one and you're in grade 10, instead of your options being 10th grade math, it'll say like geometry. And if you go, oh, my kid's not in geometry, then just toggle back and forth and you'll find it. It's a little bit of, not every grade and syllabus is purely, once you get past 8th grade, the elective courses kind of start to pop up. So if you don't see what you're looking for, if you navigate a grade back and forth, you'll find it. We'll work all that out. So probably this is a Common Core. Yeah, the math is all set up as Common Core standard, so that's what the assessments will be on, since that's what kind of the majority of people are using. So, well. Oh, Gina asked if you have hours that you've bought of Varsity Tutors tutoring. Let me make sure this is all this stuff. The virtual school day toolkit is totally free. This is kind of us saying, we've got a responsibility. As people in our worlds came to us personally and said, you guys are experts in educational tech. What do we do? We're kind of at a loss. We need something. This is all perfectly free, kind of through the entire school closure period. So all the classes and resources are free. One-on-one tutoring, if you have those, you can use that supplementary. If anybody wants, you can add that on. So that's the only thing we're charging for right now. But all of this, all the live classes, all the resources, assessments, there are, I think you can get it on the slide there. It's at the bottom here, resources for parents. We're adding more and more time blog articles, links to do-it-yourself lesson plans and those kind of things. All that stuff is free. So it's actually I did an interview with a radio station yesterday, and they were like quizzing me on that. Really, it's free. There's altruism. We like doing this. The other one, everybody's going to get online education forced on them right now, and we want to make sure it's a great experience. So I think the business case, if you're sort of wait a second, why is this free? Is we really hope everyone gets through this, thrives during this. Kids learn a lot, and if your kids have a great experience with online education, we hope you'll come back next semester. If they need some test prep or a little bit of help in algebra or something like that. But this is all totally free, and we're super proud. We're working hard to make sure we have enough of those hours that everybody can get in with reasonable class sizes. But so we're a little stressed, but also really proud. It's just a cool opportunity to help out. My wife works in a hospital, and so she's on frontline. She's not working on COVID-19 stuff, but that's that kind of helping people through crisis. And I think all of us at Varsity feel really proud that we're able to do that. So let me put up the link so you guys can see it, and then some. There's an email address if you have questions that we've got a team monitoring. So if you're trying to use it and don't see it, it's not as, you didn't see what you came for or something like that, shoot us an email, we'll help that. If you like and subscribe this channel, we're going to try to do some more informative webinar content that can help parents through all this. So like and subscribe, and we'll be back with all those. And I'm just going to kind of keep scanning the comments for a minute or two and make sure I've got, most of these things covered. If we didn't get to you, please shoot us an email. So, thanks for all the kind words. It's definitely been, we've been working pretty hard. We had a team of engineers working pretty much 24/7 over the weekend. I haven't seen fresh air in a few days, but we're so excited. What I'm most excited about is we've got a network of thousands of tutors, and the creativity, the just the enthusiasm and passion they have for, hey, I'd really love to. The number of tutors when we said, hey, you're a top-rated tutor on our platform. Would you like to create a class? This is what we're doing. The number of them that have kind of almost like humbly and sheepishly been like, could I do 2 classes? Could I do 5 classes? Could I do they're so excited to share these things with you. So more classes are being added every day. So keep checking back often if you're, kind of, okay, these classes seem okay, but my kid really likes this. Come back in 48 hours and you'll probably see something more similar to that. So keep checking back all the time. And thanks. Familiar names. Thanks, Mr. Dibnall. Appreciate that. And cool. Yeah. Thank you guys for trusting Varsity Tutors with your kids' education at this time. That means a lot to us. Thanks for turning out tonight. All the comments. I love seeing that with the community. I think I'll sign off so the recording can get going. If you guys do want to share it with friends, which again we would totally appreciate. And please, virtualschoolofthey.com, create an account, and we'll see you in some of those classes. So, cool. Thanks, everybody.